Greetings all, this is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I've got another list video prepared for you all. Of course, today I'm talking about 5 non-superhero comics you should be reading. I can't wait to dive into some of these titles I'm going to be recommending to you all today, but before we do, just a quick shout out to our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, definitely check them out with the link in my description. You can even use my code, TheComicBookReport, at checkout to receive $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support the channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's get started with today's list. First on our list today, in no particular order, Nocterra by Scott Snyder and Tony S. Daniel. This series from Image Comics is easily one of my most anticipated books. Every time we get a new volume out, there's been 2 released so far at the time of this recording, but I can't wait for volume 3. This is a dystopian science fiction adventure series set in a world where basically all of Earth has gone dark, and in the darkness, humans and animals are starting to mutate and hybridize into these monstrous creatures. The vestiges of humanity kind of survive by staying in the light and in these small communities. They are also these kind of runners in these giant semi-trucks, and that is what our main character is in this series. And as we get a little group, an ensemble cast begins to form, and this ragtag little group might have a way to get the lights back on in the world, for lack of a better way to describe that. But this is a total epic dystopian action series. It's just super metal. The art from Tony S. Daniel is striking. And again, with this large ensemble cast, I think everyone is actually really well utilized. I think that the monsters and kind of the threat and even the villain of the piece is really, really captivating. I wouldn't be surprised to see this adapted in a really great series or maybe film someday. I hope so. I think that this book lends itself cinematically in many, many ways. Scott Snyder is one of my favorite authors in the comic book industry. I love his run on New 52 Batman, and this book is easily one of my favorite of his more indie titles. I think that this is a fantastic book that doesn't really have anything to do with something like superheroes or anything in that genre, but it's more, again, of that kind of dystopian action thriller. And I think for fans of this general concept, you will definitely enjoy it. I think that it's really, at the end of the day, a really, really great, tense thriller that has just kind of this overlay of all of these monsters and creatures and fight sequences. It really, really is something to behold. I think that it's a fantastic piece there over at Image Comics. Highly recommend it. And hey, I know we're only one book in, but if you're enjoying this content and you also like things like comic book reviews, polls, shorts, things like that, definitely consider subscribing to my channel. I know I'd love to have you around. Thank you for considering. Now on with the show. Next up on our list of non-superhero comics you should be checking out, we're talking about Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen's Descender. This is a straight-up science fiction series with some incredible artwork that I think is watercolor, essentially. It's a really, really gripping story. Admittedly, I'm still making my way through this journey myself, but I am floored by what I've read so far. This series also comes out from Image Comics, and it heavily has to do with the idea of robots, artificial intelligence, and kind of interstellar wars, battle. There's some sort of interesting political matters we have discussed. This is from the mind of Jeff Lemire, of course. I've read a handful of stuff from him that I've enjoyed. Most recently, I finished the Sweet Tooth series from him. Definitely a riveting read as well. But this book is really, really great. I love the look of Dustin Nguyen's artwork. At first, I wasn't sold by that kind of watercolor feel, but after getting a couple issues in, I was absolutely hooked by how beautiful it was. It really sets itself apart in a comic book collection, particularly if you haven't seen art in this style before, and I think Nguyen has just a super great grasp on the storytelling here. And again, it is a total science fiction story. We basically have this ragtag group of people that are trying to stop the threat of this sort of artificial intelligence force that sort of showed up years ago, has seemed to disappear, but may come back. In the midst of all of that, we have this kind of little boy robot who might be the key for understanding a lot of these intergalactic implications with the kind of machines versus humans and aliens war that may or may not be coming. There's a lot of also really intimate interpersonal relationships within this series that I think is really, really well done, as you have it juxtaposed with these galactic, consequential kind of ramifications of some of the things happening. But overall, a really, really good book. I think, again, if you can get maybe 2 or 3 issues into this series, you're going to know if you're hooked or not. I think it took me an issue or 2 to warm up to the series, but once I crested that wave, wow, I was just in. I really, really like what they bring to the table here. A lot of rich science fiction plotting here. Definitely recommended. Next on my list, of course, I have to mention Undiscovered Country by Scott Snyder and Charles Soule. For those that might be longer time fans of my channel, you might have heard me talk about this book, well, frankly, every opportunity I'm able to. This is one of my favorite currently ongoing titles from Image Comics. It takes place in another dystopian future where the country that was once America has completely walled itself off and had a complete communications blackout from the rest of the world for some time. The rest of the world's superpowers and countries have basically divided into 2 factions that are always basically on the brink of complete warfare, and in the midst of this world we also have a crazy pandemic that is killing a lot of the population. Well, in the midst of that background, we have the first communication coming from the walled off once America, basically inviting a specific group of people to come into the country for a possible cure for the disease. Well, in comes our primary cast of characters, which are primarily, I believe, a group of like 20s and 30-somethings, a couple outliers in there. A truly eclectic group that have no idea what to expect in this country. The first collection has these groups showing up in essentially a wasteland, this open desert where there's kind of a Mad Max feel to the inhabitants there. There's some weird mutated animals and people, and it's just kind of this horrorscape where you don't know what is even happening. Well, I won't spoil too much, but what was once America is definitely a lot more layered and interesting than anyone would have guessed. And this group of characters has to wind through all of these different unknown regions to try to seek out the answers they're looking for, maybe some keys to their own personal pasts or conflicts and traumas, and to find a cure for this disease. This book has just about something for everyone. I always talk about this book. I've reviewed the first 3 trade paperback collections on my channel, but the reason I talk about this is because I think it is a great book with some fantastic art, with some of our industry's best creators, but yet I don't feel a lot of people are talking about this book, and I'm not really sure why. At any rate, for a non-superhero recommendation, I have to recommend Undiscovered Country from Image Comics. Definitely check it out, and you can thank me later. Next up on my non-superheroes recommendation list, Once in Future from Kieron Gillen and Dan Mora. This is a series from Boom Studios, and it's one I've had a blast making my way through. I still have to pick up the last few collections, but I'm definitely over halfway through this series, and I'm still riveted. The art from Dan Mora is absolutely just spellbinding. I'm completely captivated by it. It's visceral. It is wild. I think the colorist also did a fantastic job. Essentially, this series relies heavily on kind of European literature and kind of mythological sort of source material, folk stories, primarily centered around kind of the King Arthur legends, although there's definitely some other legends that are incorporated and talked about in this book. But basically, we have England sort of functioning on this whole other level than what reality seems to suggest. We have a lot of the real Arthurian legends kind of showing up within the world, and it's threatening to basically upend a lot of the world as we know it. In walks some of our primary heroes here. We have this sort of grandma character who's been fighting the forces of this hidden darkness for most of her life. And we have her grandson who's kind of affable and has no idea, but is thrust into this hero role. We have his sort of date who becomes his love interest, who gets kind of caught up in all of the madness of the conflict, and we have just some really, really dark, monstrous characters from a lot of these myths and storytellings from a lot of old school British and European literature. And I think the literary nerd in me absolutely was waiting for a book like this. I do think it helps to know some Arthurian legend, but I think just about anyone can enjoy the series. I really, really love the art style. This was my first introduction to Dan Mora. I've come to really love this creator as an artist, but the art in here is just a great example of what this creator can do. I think just how he depicts some of the villains and the monsters and the settings, it's just really striking. Again, the colors just absolutely pop from every page, and I think that there's a lot of humor, a lot of drama, and a lot of really solid characterization throughout this series from what I've read. It's a really fantastic non-superhero story that is definitely more for literary nerds out there like myself, but anyway, definitely check out Once and Future. Last but certainly not least on our recommendation video today, Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez's Locke and Key from IDW. This series is kind of a Lovecraftian horror, character-driven coming-of-age story that has a lot to do with family legacies. We have some really interesting fantasy, dark fantasy elements and storytelling. It all centers around this family who's recovering from a really, really deep family trauma and incidents. They basically relocated to an ancestral home kind of somewhere along the eastern seaboard. And in this property, there's all these hidden magical keys. All of these keys have a different power or ability. Only the children seem to be able to use them or see them or understand what's happening. And we basically have this incredibly rich story where the kids sort of help unlock a evil from the past that maybe has ties to the family and what goes on before in this town. And it's a really just good versus evil story. Like I said, there's a lot of kind of coming of age storytelling elements in here that are fantastic. Most of the primary characters are teenagers. We have a couple adults through in there, as well as a young child, one of the youngest brothers in the book. But it's really, really a great series. The main series is 6 of these trade paperback volumes, 3 of the hardcover collections, or you can find it all in one compendium. There's been a couple other spin-offs or one-off stories, but essentially this is a 6 trade paperback volume, incredible series. This is not a superhero book at all. Like I said, it's closer to something like horror, dark fantasy, and just kind of character drama. I really, really love it. For those that don't know, Joe Hill is actually the son of Stephen King. He's also a novelist in his own right, and this foray into comic books, frankly, it is one of my favorite comic book series of all time, but knowing his pedigree as a storyteller, it's even more impressive to me. I don't really have a ton of books by IDW, but this collection is among them, and it is one of my favorites. I think that this is definitely something different for those out there that, again, don't like the traditional superhero fare. Some really, really rich character-grounded storytelling here. They also adapted it into a Netflix series for those interested, but again, great storytelling here. Something to look out for if you are interested in non-superhero books. And that's our list today for 5 non-superhero comic books you should be reading. I know that this is really, really rich soil. I'm sure there's so many other fantastic recommendations out there for non-superhero comic books, and frankly, that's where you come in. If you enjoyed this video, definitely let me know in the comments what you thought, but also recommend some of your favorite non-superhero books you wish more people were checking out or reading. Maybe a brief synopsis or what you can expect from some of these books. I'd love to see the comment section become just this great recommendation list, particularly for new readers or maybe those that are trying to venture out of traditional superhero comics into some other rich storytelling. This is where all of you indie comic lovers can come out and show your favorite books. Thank you for helping me out in the comments, and as always, thank you for watching. It really means the world to me. I've really enjoyed creating these list videos for all of you. I hope you're getting something out of them as well. I'm always down for some more feedback. Be gentle, but thank you so much, and until next time, this has been The Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave this video a like, and maybe check out one of my others on your way out. And hey, have a good one.